Here are 3 suggestions for implementing the ideas of this chapter. 1. Set aside multiple times during your day to stop and ask yourself this key question. Right now, in what I am about to say or do my desires stem from my lower or my higher self? The ego is all about self-serving, ownership, winning, judging, and so on. The higher self is about serving, loving, and being in a non-judgmental state of peace. Ask yourself this question and create the opportunity to align yourself more fully with God. You then have access to the same powers of manifestation as your source of being. This question, when honestly explored, helps you align with the power to fulfill your wishes and desires. You don't need to abolish your ego animal nature. You do need to keep it tamed, but it isn't allowed to overshadow or destroy your spirit. Give your divine nature a chance by asking yourself this question. Right now, in what I am about to say or do my desires stem from my lower or my higher self? A very important question. Second suggestion. Spend some of your quiet meditation time visualizing a tiny spark of awareness glowing within your being. Practice seeing this God portion of yourself expanding its glow within your mind. See it growing into a personally satisfying size. Continue this expansion exercise, sensing the spark and glow as your God essence. You will begin acting from this inner God-realized image. And the third suggestion, use these affirmations frequently. I am all-knowing. I am all-powerful. I am unlimited. This helps you banish doubt and refer to this portion of yourself that lives in a spiritual world of no restrictions. Simply affirm to yourself without explaining to others or demonstrating pride in what you're doing. You are ridding yourself of ego-dominated mental messages that continue to want to convince you that you are primarily your body and its 5 senses. And here is a display quote from the book of Philippians, Philippians 2, verses 5 and 6. Quote, "Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, who, being in the form of God, did not consider it robbery to be equal with God." As your awareness increases that you are a God-realized being, you will welcome it as the central focus of your life. The concept of your higher self will gradually evolve into your highest self, which is truly omniscient, almighty, and capable of producing miracles. Here you will see a new reality, a majestic idea of yourself that previously seemed inconceivable. Your highest self is described in the pronouncement in the display quote that I just read, written by St. Paul in his letters to the Philippians in the New Testament. You move from being a spark or a fragment of God to being able to assert that I am God, and not feel as if you're committing blasphemy or a cardinal sin by such a declaration. Here, the idea that you are equal with God was promoted by Jesus Christ, and you are encouraged by him to let this mind be in you. This isn't the God created by humans, the ego-driven deity who plays favorites and requires ostentatious places of worship, has temper tantrums, demands reparations, and is filled with rage, punishing those who do not do his bidding. Not even close. I am speaking here of the creative source of all being, a God who is responsible for creating the miraculous movement from non-being to being, a God who is formless, who does nothing, yet leaves nothing undone, a God who is everywhere. This is a divine, invisible presence that's within you. This idea is at the basis of all great spiritual teaching throughout all time. When you are this God, your essence of pure love, it is all you have to give away. And when you realign yourself in this vein, once again quoting Jesus the Christ, quote, "With men, this is impossible, but with God, all things are possible." Now, all things are possible leaves out nothing, including your ability to fulfill any and all wishes that are aligned with God. You may find it difficult at first to be able to assert to yourself that I am God, but when you put it into the context of God as love, and pure love allows you to be almighty, all-knowing, and God-realized, you will, I assure you, begin to regain the omnipotence that is your essence from the moment of your transition from non-being or spirit to being, that is human. In the Vedanta, the ancient pre-Christian teachings, we are reminded that we are not a part of, but identical with, that absolute spirit of the world. This is your highest self. It's indeed a towering assumption, but one, if used in context and alignment with the creative source of all, that is the key to mastering the ability to live a life of your own wishes being fulfilled. After all, with God as you and you as God, all things are possible.
And when we're in spirit, we move away from a sense of feeling sorry for ourselves and instead look for what the lesson is. Steve and Anita had a daughter named Rachel. Rachel was brutally murdered and her body was left. And they wrote to Ram Dass, who was their teacher, and they said, how can we, after losing our daughter, how can we find spirit? How can we be inspired? How can we find God in events such as this? And there are many of you watching who have encountered these kinds of acts and have also encountered accidents and things that just don't seem to make sense. People just taken away from us at what are seemingly the wrong times. And this is what Ram Dass wrote to Steve and Anita. One of the most beautiful letters I've ever read. He said, Dear Steve and Anita, Rachel finished her work on earth and left the stage in a manner that leaves those of us left behind with a cry of agony in our hearts as the fragile thread of our faith is dealt with so violently. Is anyone strong enough to stay conscious through such teachings as you are receiving? Probably very few. And even they would only have a whisper of equanimity and peace amidst the screaming trumpets of their rage, grief, horror, and desolation. I can't assuage your pain with any words, nor should I. For your pain is Rachel's legacy to you. Not that she or I would inflict such pain by choice, but there it is, and it must burn its purifying way to completion. For something in you dies when you bear the unbearable, and it is only in that dark night of the soul that you are prepared to see as God sees, and to love as God loves. Now is the time to let your grief find expression, no false strength. Now is the time to sit quietly and speak to Rachel, and thank her for being with you these few years, and encourage her to go on with whatever her work is, knowing that you will grow in compassion and wisdom from this experience. In my heart, I know that you and she will meet again and again, and recognize the many ways in which you have known each other. And when you meet, you will know in a flash what now it is not given to you to know, why this had to be the way it was. Our rational minds can never understand what has happened, but our hearts, if we keep them open to God, will find their own intuitive way. Rachel came through you to do her work on earth, which includes her manner of death. Now, her soul is free, and the love that you can share with her is invulnerable to the winds of changing time and space. In that deep love, include me. In love, Ram Dass. I just don't think writing gets any better than that. And for those of you who can't figure it out, perhaps just listening to those words and being able to find inspiration, even in the most horrifying of times. When you're in spirit, you have a different kind of a knowing, one that doesn't require you to continue to suffer. To remember that our desires don't arrive on our schedule. They arrive when they're supposed to. I'd like to close out this program on inspiration with all of these inspiring participants, with all of the wonderful help of all of you who've inspired me so much, with a quote from one of my great teachers, Ralph Waldo Emerson. We are very near to greatness. One step and we can be safe. Can't you take the one leap, just one leap? And from A Course in Miracles, I leave you with these beautiful words. There is a way of living, a way of living in the world that is not here, although it seems to be. You do not change appearance, though you smile more frequently. Your forehead is serene. Your eyes are quiet. You walk this path as others walk. Nor do you seem to be distinct from them, although you are indeed. Thus can you serve them while you serve yourself. A new way of living, to be in spirit. Thank you for watching. God bless you.
It isn't, your purpose isn't to try to be loving. Your purpose is to be love and only have that to give away. Well, but there's one other ingredient, and it's really crucial. Forgiveness is the vital ingredient on the path of enlightenment. And if you don't know how to do it, then practice sending out love. Take the person or the people that you're having conflict with, any place in your life, send them something. You don't have to even do it physically. Just send them something that comes from inside. And what's inside is how you choose to think. And if you can make that love and do that, and that is to me the test. Not whether you can love someone when they smell good, when they do everything that you're supposed to, but whether you can love someone who has sent you hate or anguish in your life and send it back. You don't have to forget. You don't have to go back. But you got to get it out of you because it is blocking you and holding you back.
Living the Tao Te Ching, this 2,600-year-old, some people call it the greatest, the wisest book ever written. It speaks so much about relationships. Tao, the word Tao, means the great way. It's really just another synonym for God, or source, or spirit, or that which is the all-creating. And one of the things that it says that was really helpful to me, probably the most helpful thing in it, was that whenever you have a conflict of any kind, in any relationship, whenever you have a conflict, that the person who is willing to be of Tao, of God, of Source, is the one who will practice forgiveness, or will go to the person that they have a conflict with and bring love to it, instead of the freeze out, instead of the anger, instead of the hatred, instead of the revenge, instead of so many of the things that we do when we have conflicts in our lives. We just don't talk to that person. Like, I'm not talking to that. I'm not talking to him. He's going to call me because I called the last time. And but the person who lives the Tao life, the life of a higher consciousness, is the person who says, I end all conflicts on love, which is where we all come from. We come from a source that is love. So for me, that has been just so useful. I have 8 children, and that's been just extraordinarily helpful for me to be in a relationship where I can always be of love, where I can just, and so then you don't even, conflicts become something that are no longer present, because conflict requires two-ness. In order to have a conflict, you have to have two. You have two different opinions or whatever. But if you live in oneness, if you really see yourself in everyone else, see yourself in all the things, including the plants, including the animals, and including all beings, and so on. If you just suspend this ego part of you and just see yourself in that other person, then your arguments are really with yourself. And your hatreds are really about yourself. And you begin to really see that I don't have to project anything onto anyone else that isn't what I choose to be.
And the idea of allowing is that you start to see that, you start to look at the world not the way you want it to be. This is the shift in our subconscious mind training that we have to go through. We have to get out of this mindset that the world ought to be the way I want it to be, and things ought to be going the way I think that they should be going, and that there should be nothing bad happens, and all of this kinds of stuff that we fill our inner world with, and talk about how terrible this is and that is and so on, when in fact the world is just the way it is. And when you can align yourself with that awareness that yes, you can do things to improve it and so on, but not by judging it and not by saying that it shouldn't be this way. I've given the example many times of my friend Ram Dass, who, when we were talking about starvation, and it was when I was working for the Hunger Project to try to end hunger by the beginning of this century. This was back in the 1980s. And Ram Dass said to me many years ago that starvation, in different parts of the world, is part of the perfection of the universe. You've got to understand that, as hard as that is to grasp. And I paused and thought about that, and my original reaction is, how can you say such a thing? How can we accept the idea that some people have got to starve to death in a world where there's plenty of food and the technology to be able to grow it and so on is all here? How can you say that? But then he concluded his remark to me. He said, so starvation is a part of the perfection of the world, but so is your desire to end it. That's part of the perfection of the world. And so it's like and so where you put your attention is not on what you don't want, because if what you think about is what expands, and if you put your attention on the things that you don't like and that you don't want, then you just multiply the amount of negativity and the amount of what you don't want. You become a part of the very thing that you are trying to eradicate.
You want to experience prosperity at a miraculous level, you must leave behind your old ways of thinking and develop a new way of imagining what is possible for you to experience in your life. Take an inner inventory and see if the following statements are a part of your consciousness. There's just not enough to go around. You have to get yours or someone else will grab it before you. There are only so many fish in the sea. You never know if opportunity will knock. If these and similar thoughts are part of your personal inventory, then probably you were taught that you are living in a world of shortages. The concept of lack has been embedded into your belief system. In order to develop an inner vision of prosperity, you will have to shed this old vision of scarcity. The following 5 essentials of a prosperity consciousness can help you to make this shift. 1. You don't need anything else to experience prosperity. Prosperity is first and foremost a mind game. You must know that you have all that you need right now. You are lacking nothing to gain prosperity for yourself. You are led to believe that the material things are reality and are providing you with what you need, while in fact they are only more matter which is made up of more invisible space. What you need, you already have, and when you know it, go within and create it in your mind. The divine sustenance you seek in the form of material things or money will be manifested in whatever amounts needed. You must develop this new inner sense and trust in the magic of believing. Trust in the power of your mind, in the knowing I have been talking about, in that divine guidance that is readily available to you. 2. You cannot create prosperity if you believe in lacks. When you have mastered the ability to become a spiritual being as outlined in the first part of this tape, you will understand that you lack absolutely nothing. All that you need for your life is already here. When you say to yourself, I don't have enough education, talent, or strength to experience prosperity, you are operating in your mental world from a position of lack. What you have become accustomed to is called deficiency motivation. That is, you assess all of the things that are missing or deficient in your life, and then you set up a plan to repair all of those deficiencies. Thus, you set your goals and go to work at becoming prosperous. But this is a gigantic trap. You will always be suffering from a disease I call more. When you get the money you thought you needed to be prosperous, your mindset hasn't been satisfied. Your mindset is on more, on striving, not arriving. There's another kind of mindset called growth motivation, and this is the trademark of the individual who experiences real magic in the area of prosperity. With growth motivation, you simply change around the inner thinking and decide to do your living within a framework of completeness. You begin to be motivated in your life by your own bliss, by your dreams, to live the life which you imagine to be your calling, your divinely specialized mission for being here, and prosperity becomes your very watchword. Abundance begins to reign into your life. 3. You are not separated into categories. To truly know prosperity, you must learn to stop dividing yourself up and separating yourself from your prosperity. You must learn to go beyond your hypnotized state, which has convinced you that there is first you, the thinker, then you, the doer, and finally the concept of what it is that you are thinking and doing. All of this is actually one and the same. All of what you have previously divided up as prosperity thinking, prosperous behavior, and something called prosperity that is located out there must be thought of as one. When you understand this, you will stop looking for prosperity as if it were something that you can wrench from its hiding place. What you need for a prosperous life, you already are. It is all you. There are no boundaries. Now take this awareness and implant it in your consciousness. You are not going to find prosperity. It will flow into your life only when you grasp this notion of your singularity. 4. You cannot experience prosperity if you believe that you don't deserve it. If you believe that you are undeserving of prosperity, that is the thought upon which you will conduct your life. Surrender the idea that you are inferior. You are neither superior nor inferior. You simply are, and what you are deserves prosperity. Once again, you have to undo the hypnotized state that led you to this kind of an attitude. It began in your schooling, and it continues today. It is a vulgar, obscene system that creates large numbers of people who know no other way to assess their own value other than in comparison to others, and in so doing, it creates many who simply begin to think that they are not deserving of prosperity in any sense of the word. When you stop buying into that model, you can see that you are just as deserving of prosperity as anyone else on this planet. 5. Rejoice in the prosperity of others. When you feel contemptuous toward the accomplishments or lifestyles of others, or even a twinge of jealousy, you are harboring negativity where love must reside. When you have only love within you, that is all you will have to give away. You cannot be fulfilled and envious at the same time. Foster an inner belief that anyone who has achieved prosperity is entitled to it, and that their success is not a reason for you to feel inadequate or wanting. Have a quiet acceptance of what is. Send it love, and then get on with the business of creating a full, prosperous, loving life for yourself.
The manner of how and when it is desired shows up is something that you must not try to control. Manifesting is not about making demands of God in the universe. Manifesting is a cooperative venture in which your intention is aligned with divine intelligence. That intelligence is in all things and in you simultaneously. Demanding that God send your desire according to your timetable and design reinforces the incorrect idea of God as a separate energy. There's a power of infinite patience. This provocative line is from A Course in Miracles. Those who are certain of the outcome can afford to wait, and without anxiety. The notions of certainty and patience go together. When you trust and know that you are connected to that universal all-providing intelligence, then you simply place no time constraints on your manifestation. Your knowing and your infinite patience put you at ease. Your inner sense is that what you want to manifest is already here, and your inner attention is on the feeling of well-being that you are already blessed with what you seek. The inner bliss is a function of the power of your infinite patience. When you are certain about the outcome and unconcerned with the how and when, you have cultivated the power of infinite patience, and simultaneously you have detached yourself from the outcome. When this detachment takes place, you are able to go about your daily business of raising your children, doing your work or training, meditating and communing with God, and just patiently observing. Infinite patience is a sign of trust, and it calls upon infinite love to produce results in your life. When you let go of impatience, you are aligned with the God force, and the anxiety that tells you what is lacking and missing in your life is gone. You will know that God has been patient with you no matter how long it took you to come around, regardless of how far you may have wandered, and no matter how much you may have refused to listen. Infinite patience produces almost immediate results in your life. You become free when you relax your insistence to have it now. As an infinitely patient person, you know that you are already where you want to be, and there are no accidents, and that all that appears to be missing is nothing more than an illusion perpetrated by your ego. With this awareness, impatience leaves, and you stop looking for results of your manifesting meditation. Your patience allows you to remain in silent appreciation of all that is manifested in your life. This practice of patient detachment from outcome is a foreign concept to us.
We have been taught that goals, success symbols, and the accumulation of merit badges are the ways to feel important. What follows is a guide for living with the seeming paradox of attempting to manifest something into your life and at the same time not being attached to when and how it shows up. So here's a step-by-step plan for putting patient detachment into your manifesting practice. First, understand the essence of what you desire. What you desire is not necessarily in the realm of things. If you want to manifest money, for example, notice if your attention is centered on the dollars or on the experience and feeling of financial security. The experience is the essence of your desire. By putting your attention on inner feelings, you shift from being gratified by externals. The essence of your desire is a feeling of well-being and joy and an alignment with the universal spirit. You may feel that you truly want to manifest more income and a promotion. Detach yourself from the in-the-world promotion and increase in pay. Put your manifesting energy on the essence. You're wanting to feel more secure and less stress. You will probably begin to see things arriving in your life that reduce your anxiety. They may seem to have very little to do with what you originally thought you wanted. And then secondly, banish doubt and enter into the realm of certainty. When you've removed doubt about your ability to manifest, it will be easy to detach yourself from the outcomes and all of the details. Your trust in yourself and in the divine energy of the universe is all you will need. Then third, leave your expectations and go about your business. Maintain your work and play regime with a new sense of peace originating in your inner knowing about what is manifesting for you. Remain completely detached from the inclination to measure and calculate what is and is not showing up for you. And then fourth, in this step-by-step plan, maintain privacy about your desires. Sharing your manifestation efforts decreases the energy and deflects the energy into the ego's need to gain approval. Then fifth, be aware of the cues that your desires are manifesting. Keep in mind that the way things will show up in your life is not necessarily related to what your rational brain expects. Things may begin popping up into your life that were never there before and which may surprise you as you notice them more and more frequently. These synchronistic events and happenings are the result of beginning to live in a heightened state of awareness. Pay close attention to the cues as they surface and gently tell yourself, it's working, I can see the results. And then sixth, act immediately on the cues that arrive by acknowledging them. When you acknowledge the early signs of arrival of what you wish to manifest, you are giving your inner energy a positive charge and recognizing the divine universal intelligence. This recognition is essential to the continuation of this manifesting process. And seventh, don't think of your manifestation as a special favor. To see manifestation as a favor is to begin the process of bargaining with God and believing in your separateness from all other living things. Your desires manifest because you are in perfect alignment with your source of creation and because you are not placing any limitations on what can come into your life. And then eighth, view any and all obstacles as lessons, not indications of failure. Keep in mind that you are practicing patience and detachment from outcome. Everything that shows up in your life is supposed to. This includes the falls in your life. They provide you with the energy to propel yourself to a higher state of awareness. And then ninth, release all judgment from your manifesting practice. This requires you to be willing to suspend your inclination to judge that which shows up in your life as right or wrong, good or bad, attractive or unattractive. Your judgments halt the flow of universal energy into your life and put you at odds with that divine power. Your ability to manifest depends in large part on your willingness to leave behind the collective judgments that make up the totality of human beliefs. Detaching from these beliefs is one of the greatest challenges of your life. You will probably experience a sense of loss and perhaps a feeling of loneliness as you make this step out of judgment. The reward is that you will begin to expand your own perceptions and accept what others believe are their perceptions.
The following 4 examples aren't rules or laws that apply to everyone, but if they do work for others, I'll be even more inspired because it's my intention to be in a space where I'm able to give to others all that I know. I also offer these ideas with a constant reminder that when one listens to Spirit, all things are possible. And even though I'm offering them in a numbered sequence, they certainly don't conform to any linear arrangement. 1. Alignment of feelings. When I feel good, or God, I'm aligned with Spirit. As I tell my children, we must rely on how we feel to determine our state of health, rather than seeking our answers in a medical printout full of numbers. Feeling energized, content, excited, and happy are better indicators of our health and well-being than having our bodily functions assessed by a distant laboratory. A positive, honest response to the question, does this or will this make me feel good, tells us immediately if we're aligned with our creative source or not. 2. Alignments with nature. Everything in nature is in spirit. It isn't spoiled by ego, nor can it ever be. So when nature speaks to us, we should listen intently. When a wild bird touches us, for instance, or a fish brushes by when we're swimming in the ocean or a lake, I believe that it's a direct communication from our source of being. Since these creations of God instinctively keep their distance, when they depart from their DNA patterns to actually contact us physically, I think we should pay attention. So be aware of episodes in nature that arouse spirit and kindle an inner spark of awe and admiration for you. You don't have to discuss it with another being. If it has meaning for you, it's valid. Listen to the winds, the critters, the clouds, the rains, and the oceans. Listen to it all. Indeed, nature has much to teach us, and it will help show the way. All we need to do is align with its perfection and note how it aligns with ours. 3. Alignment with events. Strange occurrences and seemingly inexplicable events may actually be our all-creating source lining up coincidences, in quotes, to teach us and show us the way. The reason we begin to notice all this type of aligned synchronicity is because we've tuned into it. The teachers have always been there, but now we notice them. And our noticing indicates a new level of readiness to listen to our ultimate calling. In fact, these alignments can take some really interesting forms. The same numbers showing up, for example. We awake precisely at 4:44 morning after morning and then see those numbers appear on the odometer, on the radio, as a checkbook balance, at the deli counter, and as an assigned number for a charity walk, causes us to ask, what's going on here? The answer is that the universe is using us to be receptive and pay attention. It's not about playing all fours in a casino or the lottery. It's about knowing that these seemingly accidental repetitions are actually invitations from Spirit to join it. When a book literally falls into our lap or is sent to us by several different people, or even when we keep seeing the title and having it referred to us by others over and over, we need to notice, stop our resistance, and surrender. When we end up reading the contents and applying what it offers, we're aligning ourselves and becoming a vibrational match to the same source that's sending us these signals. And 4, alignments with people. When people line up with our thoughts and mysteriously connect their physical presence with our private inner meanderings, we should take note. We must tell ourselves, Spirit is aligning my thoughts with events that are happening. I'll stay alert to what I'm being offered here because there may be a reason. That's all. Just be cognizant of what might be happening, and by being open to what may be baffling and perhaps indecipherable, we're likely to discover that we're being guided to learn. A few weeks ago, I was reading through a book I'd written 16 years ago. In it, I mentioned a friend, Earlene Rintz, whom I'd attended school with from 4th grade through high school. I put the book down and went jogging, yet Earlene was still on my mind. I thought, I'm going to call her the next time I'm in Detroit. After all, we're both having our 65th birthdays this year. That very evening, I was scheduled to receive the Martin Luther King Mahatma Gandhi Peace Award from the Unity Church of Maui, which would be attended by approximately 1,000 people. As I completed my speech and walked to the lobby to sign autographs, I saw the little girl who sat next to me in grade school and who was my first love and who occupied my thoughts throughout my school years. Believe it or not, as I was thinking of her more than a half-century later, Earlene was thousands of miles from home and hugging me in the lobby of a theater in Lahaina, Maui. It turns out that she was visiting Maui, had seen the award announcement in the newspaper, and had come to the auditorium to surprise me. It was one of those synchronistic alignments of spirit at work. Somehow, at an unconscious level, I was already reconnecting to Earlene without being aware that she was even in the area. Noticing the same folks showing up in different settings, running into people we haven't seen in a while after we've just heard their names mentioned, and repeatedly seeing an individual's name in magazines, on television, or in a local bookstore, are all synchronistic alignments. Spirit is lining up these sequential happenings for a reason. We just need to be open to learning the reason, and it most likely will be revealed. Perhaps it will be a dream or a sudden instant of eureka, or maybe it will become clearer when simply allowed. No matter how the message comes, we'll look back on it with a renewed insight and the benefit of no longer being closed-minded about such possibilities. What I know for certain within my very core is that there's no separation between us and all that we encounter in the universe.
Years ago, my wife and I were going through some personal difficulties. We were making a decision about whether or not we were going to stay together, very frankly. Everybody in a relationship, I believe, has these moments and times when there's a struggle there and you've been together for a while and you're not certain whether this is the right path and you're thinking about these things and so on. And nevertheless, it was a very difficult time emotionally for both of us. And I can remember years and years ago, as we were going through this, what it did for me to be in that state. I became much more loving. I became much more concerned with other people. I became less concerned with the pettiness of so many things that you find yourself worked up about, because I had a different focus in my life. And I can remember thinking as we resolved it and got back closer together, and today are very close and very loving together, looking back on that time as like something that I had to go through at that time. And that what it did is it helped me to see how absurd it is for us to be focused on the minutia of life. Whether or not the walls are clean, or whether or not the toys are put away, or whether or not your food is prepared on time, or whether somebody is late with something, or whether the phone doesn't ring or does ring or whatever. Like all of those things are so minute in contrast to what you're really struggling with. And then what it also helped me to do in terms of getting this big picture was to look at some of the things that other people were going through, some of the problems and difficulties that they were having. Very often when something goes wrong in somebody else's life that we're close to, one of our parents gets ill, there's an accident of some kind. When Marilyn had that accident, I can remember how it affected me. And it gives you pause to remind yourself that you have a lot to be thankful for, and that you have a very powerful mind here that can make anything happen that you want to happen, as long as you keep yourself centered or keep yourself focused. I was able to shift from all of those petty little things. And I look back on that now and I think, well, that's what I had to learn. That's what it was for, that there's a purpose in everything, and that perhaps one of the things that I had to learn 8 or 10 years ago was how to be more compassionate. And perhaps the only way I was going to learn how to be more compassionate was to have to go through some of this stuff myself. So, like, you can do that. You can do that now in your own life. Know that there's a lesson in this for you. Know that there are no accidents in this perfect universe. And know that the deep troubles that you may be experiencing or may be hard for you have something in them for you. And that there's a secondary purpose to them. And if it does help you to slow down, and if it does help you to get a bigger picture, and it does help you to be more compassionate and more loving towards other people, then what you do is you begin to bless those things that are in your own life as offering you an opportunity to transcend them. And once you've transcended them, then you don't have to go back to that again. And for sure, my wife and I do not have to go back to ever doubting whether we want to make it and whether we want our family to stay intact and whether we want to stay loving and so on. We don't ever have to question that again. We've been there, and we both learned how to look within. And when you do look within, to be grateful for what this person is offering you. So that every time I think about my wife behaving in a way that I don't like, or vice versa, we've learned how to zip it. How to just not make ourselves miserable by saying things and by doing things that will just create more difficulties. Because we've been on the edge. We've been to that edge, and we've looked over the edge and seen what it's like to maybe have to raise a family as single parents or whatever, and to be without each other. And now we're a tremendous source of strength to each other, instead of looking for the things that we don't like. So the way to the big picture often is through seeing the problems in your own life from a different perspective. And you begin to say to yourself, all right, how can I apply the awareness of these thoughts and how I use my mind to make my life all that I want it to be, to bring into my life the things that are important to me, to improve the quality of my relationships, to have the success and so on that I think that I'm entitled to. And it's really getting to the point where you know that every thought that you have has a potential for coming into your life, or coming into form. You start to get real cautious about having anything in your mind that isn't going to work for you. And you begin to question why you would keep any of those thoughts in you. I can remember one story of a woman who came to me one time and told me how miserable she was, that she was married to a drunk. And I said, well, what's wrong? And she said, well, he slurs his words, and he repeats himself, and he smells bad, and it's just awful to be around him. And I said, let's see if I understand. Let's see who's crazy in this little scenario you've just described. Now, you said you've married to a drunk. And the drunk slurs his words, and he repeats himself, and he smells bad, and he sounds foolish. I said, that's every drunk I've ever known does exactly that. We got a drunk who's acting and doing everything that you would expect a drunk to do. Now we got you. And you're married to someone that you call a drunk, and you're expecting him to be sober. You know, now who's crazy? The drunk who's doing what he's supposed to, or you who's expecting someone who is what you've defined him to be something different than what they are? He is what he is. And why would you want to entertain, why would you want to keep thoughts in your mind that are making you miserable, which is going to expand misery for you in your life by just having those thoughts there? Why not change around those thoughts and tell yourself that you're, like, if you argue for your misery, then the only thing you're going to get is your misery. You have to get that, and you're arguing for it all the time. You're going around talking about how miserable you are. So you want to get real careful about that. And I suggest to every one of you that whatever it is you find yourself incapable of doing, or whatever you found that has been a great obstacle, or whatever it is that's in a relationship that isn't working, that you just can't seem to transcend, or whatever's going on with a particular employee or a way that you're approaching anything in your business, that if you examine, just for a moment, if you examine what belief is it that supports this behavior, because the ancestor to every action is a belief, is a thought, and then work at re-examining that. I hope it is as obvious to you as it is to me that the collective ego will benefit when we transcend our individual egos. You, as a single individual, have a sacred quest. That quest involves coming to your higher spiritual nature and inviting it to show you the way of the sacred self in your daily life. This means denying the demands of your ego if those demands contradict the guidance of your higher self. Our world is a collection of individuals urged on by the loving presence within all of us to achieve the sacred quest personally and collectively. The world will become a peaceful, fulfilled, cooperative, loving, truthful, tolerant, and pure environment as the individual parts that make up the collective consciousness restrain their egos. As is the microcosm, so is the macrocosm. The whole behaves precisely as does its individual parts. Many people I speak to tell me that they feel powerless to affect the global community. They believe that, given the scope of the world's problems, their efforts are so infinitesimal as to be insignificant. They simply are not seeing that it is precisely through a change in individual consciousness that the world will be transformed. All of the problems that we face as a group reflect those we have individually. The world is encountering a spiritual deficit that reflects our need to consciously get on the path of our sacred quest. The solution to individual and global problems is to overcome the spiritual deficit. When you make the shift in consciousness, allowing yourself to be an agent of heightened awareness, you are contributing to the transformation of our world. You are not separate from the other souls on this planet. You share the identical energy that embodies the souls of Rwanda and Pakistan, for example. You are the lamp, and God is the electricity. It flows through you as surely as it flows through all living things. When you make the decision to choose the guidance of your higher self over your false self, you have plugged into the divine inner energy. When you run your life based on the principles of the higher self, you are contributing to the transformation of the entire world. You must strengthen your will to choose the sacred path when your ego calls you a fool for believing there could ever be a world without war. If your ego can convince you, you will become part of the collective ego's falseness. Individuals who choose ego propaganda are individuals who will build more bombs and manufacture more weapons. Currently, there are some 6 billion people on the planet. About 3 million are at war or in skirmishes that cause them to kill and torture each other. But that means that there are 5,997,000,000 who are not at war. This is a hopeful statistic, which our egos do not want us to consider. By contrast, the collective ego strives to keep the populace nervously on the edge with reminders to view the world in terms of us versus them. This ego viewpoint not only reinforces the insane escalation of ways to kill each other, but is also responsible for most of our social problems. The world ego is our false self, and this is the primary characteristic that we need to recognize. We want to believe that we are our physical bodies, and that the territories we occupy are so important that we are willing to kill each other in order to maintain those boundary lines. We have become convinced that our true identities are located in tribal ancestries, traditions, histories, genealogies, and the color and shape of our bodies. We have lost sight of our authentic identities because of the labels that our egos have assigned to us. Our egos have coalesced into a worldwide false perception of ourselves based on an unwillingness to know our true spiritual nature. Although all of our spiritual leaders have reminded us of our divinity and implored and even commanded us to love one another, the world ego has won this battle and produced ancient enmities and uncountable horrors in the long history of humanity. As you travel the path of your sacred quest, you will help to dispel the absurdity of specialness that the ego so assiduously promotes. You will see an end to this kind of thinking in your life and on a worldwide scale as well. The higher part of ourselves that I have talked about on this tape reacts to a vision that is infinite. This is assuredly not the vision of the ego. The ego is just as cowardly on a collective scale as it is on an individual basis. The world ego is frightened of a mass appeal to overcome our spiritual deficit. When people face inward and embrace a more loving perspective, the power of the sacred self will create change not only in the community but in the entire world as well. The world ego will do all that it can to prevent this kind of inner approach. It will ridicule those who promote meditation, peaceful demonstrations, and the love of God as a way out of the morass of social evils. It is just as true on the collective level as it is on the individual plane. The higher self urges you to simplify and to avoid contributing to anything that hurts others or increases the separation from your spiritual source.
When Madame Blavatsky talked about who the leaders of the spiritual revolution would be, she said that these leaders will be ordinary people, regular, everyday folks, school teachers, musicians, artists, cab drivers, regular folks. And these people will speak out with a voice, and this voice will be heard, and then the bureaucracies will fall in line and begin to reflect what it is that this consciousness is instituting in our people. And if you look at the people who have been instrumental in changing consciousness in the last 25 years, you look at the people whose programs you listen to through Nightingale Conus and ask what are their backgrounds. You find out that they're salesmen. Marianne Williamson was a singer, a nightclub singer. Louise Hay was a dancer. Dennis Waitley was a salesman. Zig Ziglar was a preacher. People who just did everyday, regular things. I was a school teacher. And somehow there's a power, there's a pressure, there's something that has come and put us in a position of just talking about this kind of shift, this kind of consciousness.
Let me share with you from my heart. I have 6 daughters and 2 sons, but I have a 16-year-old daughter, the only child that we have, who has taken a different path in her life. And we've struggled with it. And she has, she had a very serious automobile accident. She had to be cut out of the car. She has taken a path of drinking and experimenting in drugs and so on. And I know that this is a path, and it's a very painful path, and she's had some very difficult times with it. And she's got a whole thing about authority and doing things her own way and so on. And I understand it, because I've lived it my whole life. And every time, I must say that in the last 3 or 4 months, there's been just incredibly dramatic shifts in our life. And it's because there has been a shift in how I and my wife are dealing with this. And I used to, when I would think about her, I would be filled with rage and filled with pain. And I would be tearful, and I'd be angry at the dumb choices that she would make and the things that she would do that just didn't seem to make sense. And it's, I don't know if you've raised teenage daughters, but I saw a wonderful title for a book about raising teenage daughters. It said, Get Out of My Life. That was the title. But first, drive me and Cheryl to the mall. All right? It's a great book, by the way. And so I would be in my mind, and I'd be thinking about it, and I would try meditating, and I'd try working on it, and so on. And nothing seemed to work. And then I began to study This Foundations of Mysticism, this series of lectures by Joel Goldsmith, this great healer, lived back in the 1950s, wrote the Parentheses in Eternity in the Infinite Way. Wonderful, wonderful readings. He was a Christian Scientist and a very big supporter of chiropractic as well. And he talked about how we nullify disorder, disease, disharmony, and so on. And that, a reminder, the Spirit gives life. The flesh counts for nothing. These words that I say unto you are spirit. And he said, getting down on your knees and asking God to heal you, or getting down on your knees and asking God to grant you abundance where scarcity resides, getting down on your knees and asking God for anything is a foolish mission. Because the assumption behind asking God to give you something is that God already has it, but he's holding it back. He said, Luke 15:31 says, all that I have is thine. It's all yours already. And you are already connected to all that I have. And God, he said, isn't going to be doing anything different 1 hour from now than God is doing now. And God isn't going to be doing anything different an hour from now than God was doing 100 years ago or 1,000 years ago. God is the infinite now. Don't assume that God is a withholding God. If I had the keys to healing you, to giving you abundance, to giving you a great relationship, to providing a job for you, whatever it is that you would like, and I held it all back, unless you begged for it or obeyed the rules that I said you must obey, you would say, you know, you're really not even a very nice person, let alone a very nice God. He said you must know that you're connected to it already, and that the disease, the disharmony, the discord will be nullified, will be wiped out when you bring spirit to it. And as I would think about my daughter and the rage, I would feel myself as I was plugged into the physical, the laws of the material. And I would, in my own mind, I would unplug myself from the material, and I would plug myself into God. It's a wonderful mental image when things aren't going the way you would like them to go. Just unplug yourself from the laws of the physical, especially where there's disharmony, disorder, disease, and plug into God. And what you do when you plug into God is you bring love, you bring pardon, you bring hope, you bring joy, you bring fulfillment to that, and you correct the error, and it's gone. I had a friend who was diagnosed with cancer and told that she had just a few months to live. And she knew that she was in disharmony. And she didn't even tell her parents. She didn't tell anyone. She knew what she had to do. She had read all the spiritual literature. She had immersed herself in meditation and deep prayer. But still, she was surrounded by and contaminated by the energy field of those who were living in fear and without faith. And she left and she rented a cabin up in Wisconsin, in northern Wisconsin. And she went there all alone. And in the process, what she knew she had to do for 8 to 10 hours a day, every day, was to just reconnect to her source. And in the process of doing this, of just communing with God, and just bringing peace, she came back from there a cleansed and whole person, and a healed person as well. It is in the bringing of spirit to disease. And that's why I say and said to you at the very beginning, you must be operating at a different level.